I'm Kamla. My guest today is John Turner. He's the director of a new documentary called Korla. John worked at a local TV station in the Bay Area, which was called KGO. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, I watched your film, Korla. What a fascinating film.
A program based on the universal language of music, it is our pleasure to present to you Korla Pandit.
Tell me about Korla. Who is he? Why did he take the country by storm? Why were women swooning over him? And what decade are we talking about?
Well, Korla rose to prominence in the late 40s, 1949, when he hosted a live music program on KTLA in Los Angeles. It was a daily 15-minute show in which he played on the organ as well as on the piano. He played popular tunes of the day as well as original compositions that he had composed that had a Indian mystical sound to them.
Which was new.
Which was very new.
Because we're talking the 40s.
It was very new and very foreign, but to that audience. But his audience was composed mostly of young white women and housewives. And they would turn on their television set in the afternoon, and for 15 minutes they would be entertained by a musician who wore a turban that had a jewel in the front, and he wore Indian brocade jacket. And the thing that was unusual about this program is he didn't speak a word. There were over 900 episodes on KTLA, the musical adventures of Korla Pandit, and he never spoke a word. He just stared directly into the camera with those mesmerizing eyes. And his female audiences felt he was looking at them. He was speaking to them, and from some of the women who I've since interviewed, they claim that Korla was their first boyfriend.
So here's a clip from the film.
The sound is one of the most powerful forces in the universe. Sound and sound vibrations. And in sound, you might say, as Emerson did at one time, vibrate a string and all strings in tune vibrate in unison. And I add to that, and so does the heart of man.
Well, we just saw a clip from the film, and I see what you mean, that, he's got this mesmerizing look. So the gentleman who gave him a break was Klaus Landsberg, who is a pioneer in the world of television. And he set up KTLA. Paramount funded him to set up KTLA. Tell me, what did Landberg tell Korla when he went on TV?
Well, what was interesting about Klaus Landsberg is that he is one of the early pioneers, as you said, in television, and that for the Los Angeles market, he invented the helicopter car chase. He brought pro wrestling on television. He also came up with a show called Beanie and Cecil, which was a puppet show. And he needed a musician to play the organ for that show and to add the effects. And he saw Korla performing at a luncheon at a department store in Los Angeles, and said, "Would you like to come and work for me on this puppet show?" And Korla jumped at the chance to be on television, or to work on television. He wasn't on camera at that time, and he started doing the effects for this puppet show. Klaus then said, "Would you like to have your own show in which you play the organ? Because you're an attractive gentleman. You're quite talented when it comes to the keyboards and on the organ."
Was he playing as Korla for the puppet show?
He was listed as Korla Pandit in the credits.
In the credits, he
In the
was listed
credits,
as okay. So that's how he got the break. But didn't Landsberg also tell him that stare into the camera?
Yes.
And don't talk.
Yes. Korla actually had kind of his voice was kind of a high register. So it really wasn't fit for television. And Klaus thought that if he didn't speak, that would add to the mysterious, the mysterious nature of.
Because he's from India and we have never seen an Indian excepting for Sabu.
Except for Sabu, and Americans were only familiar with these caricatures of Indians, which were Sabu the Indian boy, or these were.
This is all in the 30s and 40s.
30s and 40s, and these were like swamis were depicted on televisions as wearing. They would be wearing turbans.
Wasn't there also Chandu the magician?
Chandu the magician was a radio program that actually Korla worked on, and Chandu was a fellow he was a detective that worked internationally, and that script more or less demanded that Chandu be in different locations around the world.
And you said Korla provided music?
And Korla provided music for that. He could play Indian music, he could play European music, English music. He was quite adept, and so he was aware of this fascination with the American audiences with Indian personalities.
Because it was the Orient.
It was the Orient, it was the other, it was mysterious, it was different. It was something that they had an interest in learning about, but not that much.
So, where did Korla come from?
He gave several interviews in the Los Angeles, Hollywood area because he became a phenomena. He was quite popular, and he associated with stars like Bob Hope and Errol Flynn. In 1951, he rode in the Rose Bowl parade. He was that popular, but.
And that was some parade, a float there.
It was a float made of flowers, and he played the magnetic theme on the organ made of flowers.
Oh wow! Okay, so and then plays music of the exotic East.
Of the exotic East, that's correct.
So he came from New Delhi. His father was what?
His story was that he was born in New Delhi, one of 6 children. His father was a government official. He was Brahmin, and his mother was a French opera singer who they had met when she performed in India. He also said that his father knew something a little bit about show business, and he realized how talented Korla was because at an early age, 3, he was playing on the piano, playing full compositions on the piano, and he thought that Korla should get a proper education. He initially hired a tutor for him in India, then went to England where he advanced his studies. Then he eventually came to the University of Chicago where he studied, the big Wurlitzer organ.
Oh, so he played the Wurlitzer organ too?
He played, yes. He
Wow.
played the Wurlitzer organ, but he was best known for his work on the Hammond B3 organ.
Okay, which Lonnie Smith plays now.
Yes, that's correct.
Who, to me, reminds me of Korla because he has the same outfit. So Korla comes to Los Angeles in the 30s, and he passes away right here in North Bay, in the Bay Area, in Petaluma. So he spent, and he worked at KGO, right, your TV station?
Yes, he had a show for 1 year, a live show on Channel 7. And
here in the Bay Area?
Yes, in San Francisco,
Okay.
that covered the Bay Area. And so he actually had a large fan base of admirers. And he lived in the Mission District, and later he moved to Sausalito and also lived in Ross. So he had deep roots in the Bay Area.
Okay,
yes.
so he probably liked. But let's quickly go back to his appearance at KTLA. He played there for a couple of years.
Yes.
And Landsberg replaced him with Liberace.
Yes. Korla was quite popular, and he didn't feel he was getting paid the salary that was due for a talent of his nature. And he asked to renegotiate it with Klaus Landsberg, and Klaus said, "No, I think I think it might be time for you to move on." So then he worked for a company that produced these very short, 2 to 4 minute film, 16 millimeter film renditions of songs. They would capture that on film and then send those to television stations around the country. Korla performed on those and became well known not only in the Bay Area and California. There he became known in New York and Texas and Florida and internationally because these things were seen all over the country and the world. And he was becoming very successful with that. And he also felt he had a problem with the fellow who was Snader, Mr. Snader, saying that he felt he should get a little bit more pay for that as well.
And he was a gifted musician.
He was a very gifted musician, very
and he could play anything.
He could play anything, and also had a very unusual style in which he used the organ as a percussive instrument. He would pound it with his hands or with his elbows, so it was quite a performance.
And he was known as the king of Exotica?
He became later known as the Godfather of Exotica.
Oh, Godfather, forgive me.
That's quite all right. I think you'd be happy with just being called the father of Exotica music.
Okay, so he was a very talented musician. No questions about that.
Yes, and when Mr. Snader also felt that, I think Korla can replace him because he's giving me a difficult time in negotiations. He knew of a fellow named Liberace was playing in nightclubs on Los Angeles, and he brought Liberace into the studio. Liberace brought his candelabra, put it on the piano, and started playing music for these short Snader pieces.
But following the same style as Korla.
But following the same style as Korla. And he, like Korla, would look directly at the camera. And he would usually smile. But it was the same act in that he was breaking the fourth wall and reaching out to the audience. And Korla later on thought that maybe Liberace had stolen part of his act. And also he might have been a bit jealous that the fame that Liberace received for his piano playing as well.
It eluded him.
Yes.
Okay. So after he came to the Bay Area, he played with a lot of musicians. And in your film, you talked to Santana, Carlos Santana, who grew up in Mexico, was born in Mexico, but grew up in San Francisco Bay Area. Here's a clip about what Santana says about Korla.
He's a person who forever is going to be stepping out of time. Time and gravity don't mess with him. He's one of the immortals.
So how did you get Santana to be part of the film? Why did he agree?
Well, the co-producer, Eric Christensen, is a friend of Carlos, and he asked him if he would participate in an interview. And what he found out was that Carlos had grown up in Tijuana, and he was on occasion he would see on television these short TV shows of Korla. He would see him in Tijuana on his parents' television, and he was always interested in about this mysterious man on the organ, and he followed his career. And so when Eric approached him, he said, I'd be more than happy to talk about his contributions that he made just to the world of music in general.
So when did Korla pass away?
He passed away in 1998. He passed away of heart failure at a hospital in Petaluma, California.
Okay, so that was about 18, 19 years ago.
Yeah.
Okay, but then after he passed away, there was something that was unveiled, and that's what your film is about. What was it? Who was Korla Pandit? Was he the guy born in New Delhi with a Brahmin father and a mother who sang French opera, or was he an American?
Well, I had interviewed Korla in 1990 for a show I was producing on KGO television called Eccentric Avenues. And I had spent a wonderful afternoon with him, and watching him play the organ and interviewing him, and he mentioned, of course, his upbringing in New Delhi. And he stayed in contact with me till about a year before he died. He would call me up at the station just to chat about what he was doing and what. And
he was savvy.
He was savvy, and yeah, and he was plugged in. And anyway, so I developed kind of a relationship with Korla, most of it over the phone, but I did get to see him play his last concert in San Francisco, which was at Bimbo's 365 Club, in which he got a standing ovation from a packed house. He was very much appreciated and loved in the Bay Area. Anyway, after he passed away, 3 years later, there was an article that I came across that was in Los Angeles Magazine. It was authored by a journalist named R.J. Smith, and it was an extensive look at Korla's actual background.
Which is?
And to my
the suspense is killing me.
Big surprise, Korla was actually, his name was John Roland Redd, and he was born in Columbia, Missouri. He was the son of a minister, and in the 30s, the late 30s, he migrated to California and reinvented himself as a musician from India, and the rest is Korla's history.
But that was a second avatar. His first avatar was as a Latin singer, wasn't it?
Yes, when he came to Los Angeles seeking his fame and fortune, he found out that as a black musician, his opportunities for work were small. They were mostly clubs on Central Avenue in Los Angeles, and he found out that, gee, if I joined the white musicians union, that would afford me a lot more opportunity to play my trade. Prior to being Korla, he went under the name of Juan Rolando, which is, of course, John Roland in Spanish, his actual name. And he promoted himself as a Latin artist, and he got many gigs playing in clubs as a Latin artist, because at that time, Latin music was very popular in Los Angeles. So it was affording him more work. It wasn't until later that when he met his wife.
What was her name?
Her name was
Beryl?
Beryl DeBeeson. And she, along with possibly Korla's sisters, created this persona of this mysterious.
You said Korla's sisters?
Yeah, he had a sister who was.
So it was a family secret. Nobody leaked it for all these years.
Yes, it was a family secret. He was one of 6 kids, and.
So that part was true.
That part was actually true. That he was from a large family, and he could play the piano at a young age. But yes, his entire family kept that secret to his death. Took the secret to the grave. And anyway, in Los Angeles with Beryl, they created this persona of Korla Pandit, possibly it was possibly derived from a film that Korla's sister had appeared on. There was an African-American gentleman who wore a turban and passed as a man from India in that film. So that might have been the origin of how Korla Pandit, the persona of Korla Pandit was created. And I should point out too that Beryl played a very, very large role in developing this
in what
premise.
way? In what
well,
way?
she had a job as a background artist for Disney, the Disney Studios. So she knew something about art, and so she had met Korla or John on a date because she lived with John's sister in Hollywood, and they got married in 1944 in Tijuana, Mexico. And the reason that they probably chose Mexico was that interracial marriage was not allowed at that time.
It was illegal.
It was illegal in California.
So how did they then? Then he became Korla Pandit. So they were legally okay.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. I'm curious, why did he choose an Indian persona? He could have chosen any other persona.
I just think going back to that film, that in which there was an African American wearing a turban who was masquerading as a person from India, might have been the complete inspiration for this idea. Is that we've tried John as a Latin performer. Now let's see how it works as a man from India, a mystical man from India, and see what happens there.
So I'm a little puzzled because when you read after it was revealed that he was actually from Missouri, if you look at some of the interviews that he's given, he says that he belongs to the famous Pandit family, that is Nehru, who was the first Prime Minister of India, his sister's family. The second thing is he was also friends with Sabu, the actor who was in Hollywood. Then he also knew Yoganand Paramhans, who is the founder of the self-realization movement, that Steve Jobs was a big fan, I think, of him. So there were people from India who knew about him. How come he didn't get caught?
Well, I think there were several reasons for this. The first reason is that when a lot of people come to Hollywood to seek their fame and fortune, they often reinvent themselves by changing their name and also changing their ethnic background. Because such an example would be Tony Schwartz changing his name to Tony Curtis.
That I can buy because
you become more employable.
Okay.
And I'm sure that had to factor into it. And the other reason is that as a musician, he got a lot of gigs around the Los Angeles area, and many of his fellow musicians knew that something wasn't quite right because they had seen him play in the African American clubs.
Oh, they had.
They had seen him, and then he later popped up on television, so they knew that this story wasn't correct. But they also, I think, felt that because he had found a successful gimmick, they decided not to bust him. And they realized that this is how you have to make a living sometimes, is you have to, alter some of the facts.
So I think he was also very clever in the sense he didn't stray from reality, because he said he was sent to Chicago to study. So I think that's why you didn't question his Midwestern accent. Now, did the University of Chicago not check and see whether he was their student or a alum?
Yes, well, as what happened in pre-internet days is there wasn't a lot of fact-checking, and I looked on the University of Chicago's website, and among prominent alumni is listed Korla Pandit. I don't believe if he ever set foot at the university.
What was the most surprising thing that you discovered about him? You knew him because you had interviewed him, and then you found out that he was actually from St. Louis. What was the most surprising thing about him?
I would say that he had successfully subverted the system. Is that he left Columbia because of the racial prejudice, because of the Jim Crow laws, and he came out to seek his fame and fortune in Los Angeles, and he was able to successfully assume a dual identity over these years, which gave him the opportunity to realize his talents to the fullest extent. And I think this is something that couldn't be duplicated in today's age because of the internet. You could fact check John's story in a nanosecond and find out that this guy, there's nothing in India that says that this gentleman was from there, and the father, the mother. So I think, like I said, I am impressed with him for his ingenuity, his determination, as well as his talent.
We have less than 30 seconds. What did his family have to say? Because you interviewed them too.
Well, they were initially reticent of talking about him because they had kept the secret for so long. And when the article appeared in 2001, they kind of felt that they were left holding the bag. And so when I approached them, they were a little cautious, but eventually they participated, and they are now very, very pleased to have his story told to a wider audience.
John, thank you so much for telling us about Korla Pandit, a very fascinating person. And it looks like you have started collecting records of Korla Pandit. There's the one Latin holiday.
Yes.
And then there's one which is called Love Letters.
There you go. That's the guy. That's his audience.
That's his audience. So
yeah.
Vinyl is back, and so maybe these are worth something today.
Well, they could be.
John, thank you so much. So the film is called Korla the Movie, and you can catch it on TV later this year, right?
Yeah, it's actually called just Korla.
Okay. The website is called korlathemovie.com.
That's correct.
The website is called korlathemovie.com, and it's going to be playing on PBS.
That's correct.
Later this year. Thank you for watching. If you missed any of our shows, you can catch them on our YouTube channel. We'll be back again with another interview. Until then, goodbye.